the best way to find out what you are missing is to go directly to the source and find out, what am I missing? So if I was in the latter group, I would still apply for it. I'd go through the interview process should I get there. And if I miss out, I would then ask for feedback and try and figure out, well, what am I missing? Am I, 50% short? Am I 30% short? What are the very specific things that I need to do this job? And now I can create a very clear roadmap to go and build my professional development to come back in the future and apply again. If you don't do that, you kind of fly blind in the future trying to think, I just need more experience, I need more qualifications. Well, how do you know exactly what you need unless you ask the people who are going to hire you? So I would always apply, because you either get lucky or you learn. G'day guys, coming up on the show today is part 2 of our 2-part Best of Ask SportsGrad series. This is a collection of the most popular questions that's been asked by you guys that have made it to the Ask SportsGrad section of the podcast. Today, we are going to dive into your top questions specifically around job hunting, networking, and using LinkedIn. In here, you'll learn how to find experience when you can't get any, how to job hunt if you've just moved to Australia, what to do if you're not qualified but really want the job, how to network, how to find mentors. And then on the LinkedIn front, we answer your questions on what should you be posting about, how to increase your engagement if you are posting, plus how to craft your experience section properly. So if you are struggling to crack the sports industry job market, put this in on repeat. Let's go.
I started volunteering.
It's all about who you know in sport.
Am I going to be calling the last 10 seconds of the grand final?
You can connect with the interviewer. The hand goes up when they've got to make a decision.
Having a network is one of the most important things you can do.
I didn't necessarily follow my passion. I followed my curiosity.
Once you've worked in sport, there's no going back.
And then lo and behold, before I left, I got offered 2.
Are you aiming for a future in sport? Be ready to transform the industry. Study with Deakin and be prepared to redefine what it means to work in sport. Deakin's School of Exercise and Nutrition Sciences is ranked number 1 in the world. So if you want to turn your passion for sport into an impactful career, get ready to push the limits of exercise and sports science, sport coaching, sport development, sports management, nutrition sciences, physical education, and more. Apply now to study at Deakin in 2024. This one comes from Rav De Silva, and he asks, any advice on how to best get involved in volunteering? I naively thought there would be more information on team websites, but I can't seem to find anything.
Great question. And that is one of the dilemmas of the sports industry. The websites aren't always up to date and the roles don't always get advertised, which is why we keep talking about the fact that 80% of roles in the sports industry live in the hidden job market. So the best way to get these volunteer roles, or any roles that you can't find from the website, is to get out there and meet the people in the organizations. So, for example, one of the great networking stories that's come through our community led to a job at the AFL. And Nathan Peroni, one of our members, he jumped on a SportsGrad community speed networking night and got connected with another member, Lachlan Croft. And at the time, Nathan was working at the AFL in a customer service role, and he knew that their team was hiring new customer service casuals. Lachlan needed some sort of role in sport to get his career going. Chatted to Nathan. Nathan told him about this role that wasn't being advertised. And then Lachlan was able to throw his hat into the ring. Nathan helped him with the application. 3 weeks later, Lachlan is working at the AFL, and all of his friends are going, what the heck? How did you get such an amazing job? And that happens everywhere. For example, like if you want to volunteer with Melbourne City FC this A-League season, then the best way is to chat to the other volunteers. And to be honest, there's about a dozen of them inside the SportsGrad community at the moment. So if you are a member, the best way to do that is to go into the offers and asks channel inside the community and say, hey guys, I'm looking for some volunteer opportunities. Is anybody volunteering in an organization right now who could use a few extra hands? And then from there, that's where these roles start to become available. For example, there is a friend of the show called Jasmine Karuna, who was working for AFL Europe over in London. And she's on her way back to Australia now, but she put her hand up to help out with the Socceroos matches in England. And she got connected with Sam Hickson, who we mentioned. And Sam said, hey, if you want, you can come and help us out at our match against New Zealand at the Brentford football ground. And sure enough, Jasmine is now on the pitch with the Socceroos, helping to manage the match day operations. That role's not advertised anywhere. It's because she went straight to Sam, or because she posted I think she posted in the Malar group.
Yeah.
And someone in the Malar group from Football Australia helped her get in touch with Sam. But seriously, those roles you don't find on a website. It's all about who you know. And if you're inside this SportsGrad community, then just chuck it on the Discord channel and someone will be able to help you out.
Rubes, this question comes from Meg. And this is one we get a little bit often, I've seen coming through as of late. The question is, I still live in the UK and don't have any solid plans to move to Australia yet, but my plan is to move in the next 12 months. I'm still applying for jobs, as if the right job came up, I would be happy to move as soon as possible. How can I make myself come across as a more realistic candidate for a role in Australia without being in the country yet? And then she's put in brackets, I have an Australian passport, so she can get here at any point.
Great question, Meg. And I think a lot of people face this challenge no matter where they're trying to move overseas and work in sport. Doesn't matter if you're going from Australia to London to the US. You really want to make sure that you land on the ground as smoothly as you can and ready to go into a new job and, start your life on the other side of the world, because that's exciting. So in terms of how to make yourself come across as a more realistic candidate, well, there's a few things that go into this. One is that if you are in the country and people can see you and they can know you and they believe that you can start next week, then that is a realistic candidate. If you're on the other side of the world and you're just a name on a resume, then that is, just a name in a pile who's, a long, long way away that doesn't really concern the hiring manager. So to be a realistic candidate, you have to make yourself known. And if you can't do that in person, then you need to do that over Zoom. So I spoke to one person who did this successfully, moving from Australia to London. And Meg, you've got a good time frame in terms of the next 12 months, because this particular person started 12 months before they wanted to move to the UK. And what they did is they started scrolling through LinkedIn and reaching out to people who they wanted to connect with. And so she would jump on Zoom, and over a series of months and series of Zoom calls, she began to grow her network in London. And so eventually, when the time came to move, she was landing on the ground with a network ready to support her. And within 3 weeks of landing, she was able to land her job at Chelsea Football Club, of all places. So to be a realistic candidate, you've got to make yourself known. Do that as best you can from the other side of the world using LinkedIn and Zoom. And then you really want to solidify your place as a candidate when you arrive on the ground. That's kind of the kicker. That's, it's hard to get a job before leaving. If you can do that, kudos to you, well done. But once you arrive on the ground, that shows a lot of people that you are serious. I'll give you another example. Tom Hickey, who has been on the podcast, who worked at the NFL and the International Olympic Committee, and now he's at the Brisbane 2032 Games. He just packed up his life in Melbourne as a corporate lawyer and moved to New York. He had nothing to go to. But when he arrived, he networked like crazy. It took him a few months and eventually met someone from the NFL. That led to working 1 day a week there. Then someone left, and now he ended up getting 3 days a week, 4 days a week, eventually became full time. But they wouldn't consider him for that, first little part-time role unless he was there and they could see that, okay, well, this guy's legit. And on top of that, we hear of people who go overseas to do a bit of a reconnaissance trip, to go and suss out what it's like on the ground before they actually move to the country. So, for example, if you wanted to move to the US, you might go over there on a 2-week holiday, and while you're enjoying yourself, every now and again, just try and arrange a coffee when you're in LA and you want to meet up with the Lakers, or when you go to New York, meet up with the New York Giants. So you can start to build your network in person, show people that you exist and that you are serious, then you can go back home and still keep that vision. They can still keep that opinion of you as a realistic candidate in their mind, even though you haven't made the full leap across the world yet. So there's 3 different ways that you can go about it.
Amazing. It's all about the networking, Meg. So good luck. I'm sure you'll get there in the next 12 months. This week, Rubes, our question comes from Ben. Ben has said, I've seen a few jobs come up that I'm really interested in, but I don't tick all the boxes on paper. Should I still apply or just wait until I have all the qualifications?
Great question. This is one that we get a lot because there are a lot of people out there who are nervous about putting themselves something forward to where the chances of being rejected are high. And I understand that sucks, so why would you go chasing that? But if your ultimate outcome is to get a job within the particular area of the role that's in front of you, then I would advise applying for it regardless of whether you're ready for it now or at some point in the future. The benefit of doing that is if you apply now, you give yourself a chance of actually getting it. So if that becomes a surprise success, like we've just heard with Barks, then amazing, you've achieved your goal. But if you do in fact need to build your skills and qualifications, the best way to find out what you are missing is to go directly to the source and find out, what am I missing? So if I was in the latter group, I would still apply for it. I'd go through the interview process should I get there. And if I miss out, I would then ask for feedback and try and figure out, well, what am I missing? Am I 50% short? Am I 30% short? What are the very specific things that I need to do this job? And now I can create a very clear roadmap to go and build my professional development to come back in the future and apply again. If you don't do that, you kind of fly blind in the future trying to think, I just need more experience, I need more qualifications. Well, how do you know exactly what you need unless you ask the people who are going to hire you? So I would always apply because you either get lucky or you learn.
Yeah. And they're hiring on potential, right?
Yeah.
It's not always, do they satisfy every single piece of criteria? So just go for it, I say. And Barks is a great example of that.
Exactly right.
Rubes, this one comes from Jack, and he says, any advice on how to improve my networking skills, but specific to the sports industry? I've come from quite a corporate industry and networking in sport feels very different.
Interesting. I haven't got this one before. I haven't
Either.
really been told that networking in sport feels different to another industry. At a fundamental level, I don't think too much changes in terms of like, how do you connect with people? How do you approach them? What are the good and bad ways to hold a conversation? But I guess where sport is different is the people are different. In sport's a very purpose-driven industry. People who want to work in the sports industry have a really strong why as to why they want to be there. And that can separate a lot of people in terms of who people gel with, who they want to help, and who they let in. So I guess one thing that I would probably do to help your sports industry networking is actually get clear on why do you want to work in sport? Because then when you can arrive at networking situations, then you can start to tell stories about how sport had an impact on your life and the impact that you want to make on the industry in return. And then that opens up conversations to understand why does, the senior marketing manager at the NBL want to work in sport? And then you start to bond on this shared passion for sport and wanting to help and contribute. So, yeah, at a fundamental level, I think the basics of network are consistent across any job or any industry. But I know from having been in the industry for several years that people in sport are very connected to their why. And if you are connected to your why, then some great stories and some great conversations will evolve out of that.
Yeah, I think you've put that perfectly, mate. Like, I think a lot of the sport is purpose driven. It's not, it's not always about making profit and money. It's about like creating great experiences for people at the fundamental level. So the nature of the conversations are very different. And I think that's the case if you go to a number of different industries. The conversation is going to be different because of the nature of the work. So I like how you put that there. Like if you're in touch with your why and what works for you and literally why you want to be in the industry, then I think the connection with people will come a lot easier. So that's an interesting one. I've never really spoken about the nature of networking in different industries. It's interesting. I know it works slightly different across countries and across cultures. Some people like to get to the point immediately. Some people like to chat and warm up to it for 15 minutes. But across industries within specifically,
Australia, that's what I would probably put it down to. I'd also just add to that, people in sport are very, very kind. Everyone's had a helping hand to get to where they are because it is such an industry that relies so much on who you know. Everyone has been introduced to someone or had a help to get their foot in the door. And if you make yourself someone who people want to help, then you'll receive that in return. Today, this one is going to be a question that has hit up my inbox very regularly in the last couple of weeks. I'm talking about my LinkedIn inbox. A number of people have messaged me saying, hey, Ruben, any advice on how to get started in the sports industry? Where do I even begin? And we've covered this on a number of occasions inside the podcast, but the episode that I keep sending people back to is episode 200. Now, episode 200 is a very concrete roadmap to getting a job in sport. There are 8 key steps that we outline here, and you can hear how other experts and professionals from the podcast in the past have been able to do the same thing and achieve incredible outcomes from it. So if you are looking to understand where do I even begin to get into the sports industry, make sure you dive into episode 200. That has got the most concrete advice we've ever given out on how to break in. And I recently sent it to a girl named Zane, who, funnily enough, resides over in Monaco. And after sending her episode 200, she had to listen to it. And she went as far as posting about it on LinkedIn. And her post said this: round of applause to the SportsGrad podcast. Ruben Williams sent me this episode about a week ago, and it is by far the best advice I've ever heard regarding finding work in the sports industry. I'm slowly making my way through their playlist, but this one comes highly recommended. So rather than give you all the answer right here, I'm going to send you to episode 200 where we break it down very, very clearly, and you'll get the full details on how to break in without getting lucky. That is the key part. We don't want to make it by chance. If you can do very deliberate things to get a very deliberate outcome, then you are in control, and episode 200 will put you in control.
This question comes from one of my favourite members, Ari. He's come to a few coffee catch-ups. He's a really great fella. And this is his question. So I'm looking for some advice for an internship that I'll be completing this year. For those who got an opportunity out of an internship, one, what are the little 1%ers that you did that you believe made you get noticed in that position? And number 2 is, how did you get the most out of your experience?
Great question, Ari. And likewise, one of my favourite members too.
Yeah.
Brilliant guy.
King.
Yeah. I'm going to use the example of someone we've just hired, and her name is Acacia Quinn. And
we didn't even mention this at the top of the episode.
We got a new full-time hire.
Yeah. What are we doing?
I know.
There's too much to talk about.
There's
First
so
half of the year, it's too stressful.
So much to include.
But shout out to Acacia.
Yeah. We probably should have got Acacia in here to just tell you what she did. But as her manager, I can explain a few things that made her stand out. So Acacia's story is that she was a sport management student, became a SportsGrad member. And we noticed the work that she was doing because she was very active on LinkedIn. And I started chatting with her on LinkedIn, and she said, hey, my next goal for the year is to find an internship for uni. And I said to her, well, we're looking for interns. Do you want to help us out? So she came on as an intern. And then when the internship finished, we kept her on as a casual employee. And then now, start of new year, we've hired her in a full-time position, which is the first time we've ever done that with anybody. So it had to take someone exceptional for us to get there, regardless of our financial position.
Yeah.
So
we'll sort that out later.
Yeah. So Acacia stood out from day dot. And so here's a couple of things that really made me notice the work that she was doing. Number one, she was putting herself out there on LinkedIn. That's literally how we came in contact with her. If she wasn't sharing the work that she was doing at uni or the opportunities that she was taking up when she was doing her study abroad in America, I wouldn't have known what she was up to. And I also, whenever I see a student post on LinkedIn, I also think, wow, that person has got the guts to post on LinkedIn and has got the initiative to post on LinkedIn. So regardless of what she said, that's indicated to me both of those two qualities, which stand out exceptionally. So that's kind of how she got her foot in. Yeah. Then once she became an intern, a couple of things that she did really well was that she communicated exceptionally well. So she could easily listen to a task. She was open to learning. If she had any problems, she would address them quickly. I think the worst thing that you can do when you are new into a role is not ask questions. If you have a problem or you hit a roadblock and you sit on that, you don't help anybody by holding that in. And we've certainly dealt with people in the past where we're like, why didn't you tell us like when this came up?
Yeah.
Acacia was very quick to ask questions. So we don't really care, if you don't know what to do right now because you're still learning and we can help you. But we do care if you are not proactive in seeking that help.
Yeah.
So that was another thing. Another thing that stood out for us was that she was incredibly personable. Communicates not very well with us, but with other members of the team, other interns that we've had, and importantly, with our community too. So whenever she was at events, she was very good at getting around to everybody, very good at helping people and making introductions or suggesting podcasts. And even one of our investors, Bennett Merriman, kind of came up to us or at a meeting at a later date and said, hey, that Acacia girl that you've got working for you, she's excellent. I really noticed her work at the meetup. And so for someone like Acacia, not only do we pick up on the work that she's doing, but other people who are involved in SportsGrad notice as well. And so for you, Ari, or for anyone else, it won't just be your bosses that you need to impress. Everybody's watching and they will put in a word to your boss and that just helps your boss's impression of you. So I could go on and on because Acacia is outstanding. One other thing she does really, really well is she writes well. And I think if you can write well, that translates to a lot of different tasks that you have to do. So that's a bit about Acacia. Feel free to reach out to her if you want to know more about what she did and what you should be doing as well to turn your internship into a full-time position.
Rubes, this one comes from Dan, and he says, any advice on how to address cultural fit on a resume? What do organizations look for when they say that, and what should I be doing to show that I would be a good fit? Great question.
Great question, Dan. Okay, first thing to probably address is what does cultural fit actually mean? And I think in simple terms, it basically means, are you going to be easy and enjoyable to work with? So, are you going to fit in with the team so we can achieve results together? And also, while we're there, we want to have fun. So are you going to be an enjoyable person to work with? So, your personality and the way you work with others is a big factor in your cultural fit. So in terms of how do you address it on a resume, a lot of those are personal characteristics that are quite obvious when you see people in person. So it's hard to tell from a resume, but one of the other things that comes up with cultural fit is a lot of people will say, I just want to hire someone who gets it or who understands it, and they never really define what it is. They just say, can you get it? And leaves a lot of people in the dark. Like, what is get?
What is it?
what am I getting? But basically, if you get it, it basically means that you've worked in a certain space before. So if you were to try and display cultural fit on a resume, the way to do it is to show that you have done similar things before. So one way that you can show cultural fit, and actually I might go back a step. A lot of people who work in the sports industry started out volunteering in grassroots sport. And they did their time there, they networked, they put in the yards, and eventually they got a step up. So one way you could show cultural fit to fit in with those people who are already working in sport is go and volunteer in grassroots yourself, because that is one way to get the experience. And when people look at you on paper, they can say, okay, this person is highly likely to get it because I can see they've been volunteering at this football club this season. So that's really the only way you can do it on a resume. Actually, another way you could do it is display it in your interests section. So in the resume template that we have in the SportsGrad community, it includes a subheading called interests. And under that section, we encourage people to write down, what are you interested in? What do you do outside of work? Do you travel? Do you play music? Do you play sport? Do you write? Do you read? What is your life outside of your profession? And that's another way to kind of show cultural fit. Are you going to be able to have a conversation, or are the people who are going to employ you going to enjoy working with you based on your hobbies, basically? So in terms of things that you can put on your resume. Those are kind of the two things. And what do organizations look for when they say that? It's really this kind of gray sort of thing, but it's a combination of, do you get it? Are you enjoyable to work with? Are you easy to work with? And in terms of what should you be doing to show that you would be a good fit, number one is I would be hanging out with the types of people who are likely to hire you. So if you can join circles like the grassroots clubs, or if you can network with those people so you can understand what are, mature managers in the sports industry like, and how can I learn to build a relationship with them, then you're more likely to be perceived as a good cultural fit.
Awesome. I took the liberty to look up a few podcasts that may help you, Dan, as well with your question. And episode 109, if you want to go back, we did an episode on how to conquer cultural fit. So might not necessarily speak directly to the resume part, but exactly what Rose has mentioned there. I think we talked through that as well. So it's another episode you can listen to get a bit of advice on that one.
This one comes from Michaela, and I love this question. Any advice on how to best seek a mentor? My university has a mentor program, but there isn't anyone who is involved in the sports industry currently in it. Great question, Michaela.
Excellent question, Michaela. And I'm glad that you're thinking about this, because having a mentor can be one of the most influential elements to a successful career. If you've got someone who can give you feedback regularly and just guide you in the right direction, that can save you a lot of wasted time and point you in the right direction to do things a lot quicker. So definitely recommend finding a mentor. I've got a few who I talk to regularly, which are of excellent value. In terms of how do you find one, well, there's kind of two ways to do it. The first way is you can go through a mentor program and say, hey, I want a mentor. Can the program please match with someone suitable? Second way is you can find someone who's in your network, who you gel with, who you trust, and can catch up with them. I prefer the second way. I've been a part of the first way before, and I've found that sometimes it can kind of be a bit of a band-aid approach. It's like, all right, this person signed up to give help, this person needs help, just go together. It's not always a great fit, and it can kind of, the foundations are built on the fact that it's a little bit of an exchange. Whereas the second way is built on primarily the foundation of a friendship first. Like if you know a lot of people and you get to know the right people first, and you can form a friendship with people of all different ages, then it becomes easier to have a conversation about what to do with your career or anything else you need advice on. So in terms of how do you find that second type of natural mentor, the first thing you need to do is go out and meet a whole lot of people. So say, for example, you go out there and try and meet 100 people, and maybe you get to meet 50 of them, and of those 50, you send each of them an email asking for help. Say you have a question related to your career, you've got 2 job options, you're not sure which direction to take. Say of those 50, you probably get 20 of them that respond to you. So from that 20, you'll now have 20 bits of advice. And you then can take on bits of advice and have a listen to what they're offering and see what's good for you. Then from there, go and take action on the bits of advice that you like. Once you've done that, report back to those people and say, hey guys, I have taken this action, here's what I'm doing. If you hear back from them again, they're now invested in you, because they've given you advice, you've gone and done it, they have seen a result in you, and they're going to want to help you more. From that, you'll probably get like 5 or 10 that keep helping you. And now you can just start to kind of funnel down a mentor that is good fit for you. So then you can keep going further than that. If you want help with something else, you ask them a second question. And if they respond to you, then now you've got a really invested mentor. By that point, you've probably cut 100 people down to 2 or 3. And if those 2 or 3 are experts at different things, then that's probably the right amount that you want. So the way I would do this is just casting it wide, ask a question, see who responds, take action on their response, then see who responds again. That person's your mentor.
Love that. It's a process. It's like super organic as well. And like you said, I think the mentors that we have are essentially friends. And that's how it's kind of evolved from just initial questions and building of that relationship. And I think you'll find the more, like you said, once you act on somebody's advice, that'll automatically draw them to you, and they'll appreciate that at the same time. So often it might fall on your lap following that. So great question.
These mentors, they want to know that they're spending their time usefully. And so if they're giving out advice and they're spending time with you and you're not taking action on what they're saying,
yep,
then they're not going to give you their time again.
No.
Simple as that.
Yep.
So if you can show them that you actually listen and you do the thing, then they will give you more time.
Yeah. Nice one. Great question, Michaela. Thank you for that.
How do I increase my LinkedIn engagement? I feel like I'm posting, but it's not quite hitting the numbers I would have liked. It's a great question. We're all looking for this.
It is a great question. And there's nothing more flattening than putting out a LinkedIn post and nobody engages with it. Like putting yourself out on LinkedIn is like hard enough, but when no one comments or likes what you're doing, it's just like, okay, well, why did I even bother? So,
and also when you think it's like really, really good, and you're like, oh, like how did that not resonate? I don't get it.
Yeah, totally. I can empathize with you, Yuri. In the last 3 and a bit years, I've posted over 1,000 LinkedIn posts, and thankfully, that feeling of having a post that falls flat has worn off. But during those 1,000 posts, I've also kind of worked out what works well and what doesn't work well. And so every year of posting on LinkedIn, I will analyze my posts that have gone out and figure out, well, what posts are doing the best and how can I do more of it, and what posts are not doing so well and how can I do less of that. And so in that time, my posts have gathered over 4 million impressions, views of people on LinkedIn looking at my posts. And the average view count per post has kind of gradually gone up year by year as I've started to optimize what are the best types of things to be posting. So here's a couple of things I've learned. Number one, we share a lot of podcast episodes. One thing that tends to work really well when we're sharing something that's got a link attached to it is take a photo and talk about the episode using that photo, and then include a link in the comments. So for example, if I was interviewing you, Ryan, and I said, I've got a brand new episode coming out with Ryan Walker, rather than just post a link to the episode and let Apple Podcasts provide a preview on LinkedIn and it just posts the podcast tile, what I'd do is I'd take a photo with you in the studio, or I'd grab a screenshot with you if I was recording over Zoom, and I'd post that, and then I'd chuck a link to where you can find the podcast in the comments. There's a couple of reasons for that. If we start with the imagery, a lot of people just post links to articles and other different embedded media types on LinkedIn. And so it's a really common thing to see. And the bad thing about common types of posts is they don't stop people from scrolling. And your number one goal on LinkedIn, if you're posting content, is to get people to stop and look at what you are posting. So if you post something more interesting, you'll get them to stop. Then if you want people to, if you want that to be pushed to as many people as possible, one thing that LinkedIn seems to not really like is links in the post.
Yep.
So if you take the links out of the post and put them in the comments, then LinkedIn seems to optimize that as well. Another thing that LinkedIn seems to like, or seems to do too, is push out a post a lot more if it gets a lot of engagement in the first hour. So the first hour of a post tends to determine how successful that post is going to be. So if you can optimize the time that you post, then you get more people in the first hour and it'll get carried further after that. So if you think about when the best time to post is, just think about when you're on LinkedIn, typically in between when you're doing other stuff. So in the morning, over lunch, or in the evening. So typically if you post at those 3 points of time in the day, you should be able to get people whilst they're active on the platform. So there's a couple of things to try. The last thing I will say is text and copy. So you've got to write something to accompany your image. the best thing that you can do is keep it short and sharp. So 1 to 2 paragraphs, explain what it is, explain the benefit that people are going to get from clicking on your link, include a clear call to action to say, if you want to listen to this podcast, check out the comments below for the link, and give people what they need in as quick amount of time as possible, because people are busy. People don't have time to read massive stories about everything. Sometimes that's appropriate, but generally keep it short, keep it punchy, make the image engaging, and then put a link to anything you want to include in the comments, and generally just post it at 8 a.m. and you'll be right.
Love it. Yeah, I think it's super interesting, and like, you know, I'm the same. You kind of just go through and you learn what works. So I think, like, for those out there who have probably just started on LinkedIn or have been, you know, more active on it for about, you know, 6 months, it's a good period of time to look back. Actually go back and look at what has worked and what doesn't, and you'll start to see patterns. Literally, like you do, Rubes, you go through each year and look at these patterns. Like, even if you've only been using it for a small period of time, just go back and see what works and what hasn't, and you'll see some things that you're doing really well and what doesn't work. And you know, a big learning for me as well has been posting these links, and it just doesn't perform. Like, I used to always post the YouTube link to our episodes, Rubes, and talk about posts that go flat. That was one of them. So yeah, love that. Photos and adding a link in the comments usually goes well. Now, Rubes, this one comes from Claudia. I've gone into the archives here, and this question is: I have received an award at my footy club's presentation night and was wondering if this kind of thing would be good to include on my LinkedIn. It was nice to be recognised for my contribution to the club as a volunteer, but I'm not sure if this kind of award would be suitable for my profile, or would it be more, you know, something that I just leave off and whatnot. So any insights would be awesome. Great question, Claudia.
Great question. And firstly, congratulations on your contribution to the club and being recognised with an award. That's fantastic to receive. But I can totally understand your predicament, because it's always difficult to know what you should and should not be posting on LinkedIn. So hopefully we can help you understand some of the fundamentals that will allow you to not only make a decision on this piece of content, but anything else that comes up in the future. So, assuming that your goal is to get a job in the sports industry, there's a few things to keep in mind. Number one, to get a job in the sports industry, you have to differentiate yourself and you have to stand out. And the way that you can stand out is by having greater networks than people, as well as better experience than people. So if we focus on the experience part to help you differentiate yourself, you can volunteer for a grassroots footy club and carry the water for the entire season, and at the end of it, you probably just say, I volunteered for the club, and that's really what you've got to say for yourself. But if your experience involves taking on projects, creating an impact, and generating a result that has a number attached to it, then now that is now a very tangible example that you can take into an interview, that you can put into a LinkedIn post, that you can, you know, talk about in conversations that you're having with people, so that people can understand what you actually did and what you're capable of in the future. Those are the nuggets of gold that you can get from volunteering experiences that help you stand out to get a job in sport. So, to help you answer your question about what should you post on LinkedIn with relation to this award, if you were to say, hey, I got an award based on volunteering for my club, as a person who doesn't know you and just sees that in my feed, I would look at that and say, oh, that's nice. You know, good on her. She's volunteered this year. I'm sure she did some great things, but I'm not really sure of the impact that she's made to get that award. If I was a potential employer looking at that post, what I would love to see that would make me want to keep you in mind and maybe even reach out to you and say, hey, there's an opportunity going in our organisation. Have you seen it? You should apply. Is if you use that post to articulate what you did and the impact that you created. So sure, take the photo with the trophy and the committee and whoever else you want to thank, put that in there. But in the copy of your LinkedIn post, I would be talking about what was your role, what did you do for that season, and what was a quantifiable result of that. So Did you volunteer as an event manager and you threw 5 events throughout the year that raised $25,000 for the club and got a total of 600 people in attendance for the club? If so, now if I'm hiring an event manager role, I can look at that and say, wow, this person has done that at a grassroots level with little to no help. I'm sure she would be able to thrive in the environment that I've got. Or maybe you work in sponsorship and you're going out to local businesses to raise money. Or maybe you were working in sports science and helping the athletes get stronger throughout the year. Whatever it is, I'd prefer to hear you articulate exactly what the impact you created was, and then just add a photo with a trophy to it, which kind of adds a bit of authority and social proof to what you're talking about. So with that in mind, you can now use that for anything that you do in the future. You don't need to wait for an award to come to you. If you volunteer and create an impact with a quantifiable result, write that down, put it in a LinkedIn post, remember it for your next interview as well. And then if there's any great photos that come along as well, that's just a bonus. So that's how I would be treating this opportunity to get your name out there on LinkedIn.
Now, Rubes, this one comes from Pat, and he asks, the layout of the experience section on LinkedIn, should you write it in a paragraph format or summarize bullet points? What should these points address?
Great question. Okay, I think first thing to understand with your LinkedIn experience is that nobody probably cares about your experience as much as you do. So if you feel like writing paragraphs on paragraphs, great for you, but no one's actually going to spend the time reading it. So you need to make your point clear, quickly, and impactful, but do it in a succinct way. So here's what I would do. And this is literally just copying what's already on my resume, because there's no point writing the same thing twice. Like your experience in your resume should probably be the same stuff on your LinkedIn profile too. So I always write it out like this. I'll have underneath your title and the organization, I'll write a quick little sentence that explains who the organization is, so that anybody who's got no idea who I'm working for has some understanding as to what I'm about to explain to them. So for example, I might say digital commercial specialist at Cricket Australia. First line is Cricket Australia is a national governing body for cricket in Australia. That might seem obvious, but if I'm going for a job in Chile and they've never heard of it before, then you want to give them some understanding. Then I might write a quick little lead in line that says, as part of my responsibilities in this role included, and then I would go into the 4 most impactful dot points about the role that I can include. And within that, to make it impactful, you want to include numbers. If you've achieved a specific result or if you've got a specific percentage change, then include that. Yeah. Just so someone who wants to quickly get an idea of who you are and what you can do, can kind of skim read your experience, see the work that you've done, see the tasks that you've got experience doing, and see the result that you've been able to achieve too. So that's how I would do it.
Nice. Yeah, I've seen a few of these, like people just writing paragraphs and paragraphs of stuff, and it's like, really just give me the top line stuff of what you did and how you did it, Super punchy.
I think if you want to go any further than that, you can add a thing called linked media to each section.
Yeah.
And that's where you might include a link to a post that you've put up about your work in that particular job.
Yeah.
And that's where, the post can literally be a couple of paragraphs long and go into a lot more detail about one specific thing that you've done. So I would add in that link for anyone who wants the extra details.
Yeah. And I reckon it looks visually way better. It's kind of, I think it's limited to the type of role, because sometimes there's not as much links to share, for instance. But like for my experience with cricket, I put in like 2 or 3 of our partner campaigns that I worked on. Like that's just a good example of like the work that I did. Yeah. So if you can find those links, it looks a bit better as well.
Hey friends, one last thing before you go. If you really want to make an impact in sport, then subscribe to the SportsGrad newsletter. Inside, we share all the latest job openings and networking events, so you're always aware of opportunities to land a job and grow your network. Plus, we share a Q&A with a professional on how they grow their career in sport. Here we talk about things like how they moved overseas or negotiated their salary or landed a new job or promotion, made a career change, and so much more. It's kind of like a little boost of inspiration in your inbox before the weekend. So if you're like us, you're career driven and you're keen to progress quickly, you're going to love the SportsGrad newsletter. To get it, head to sportsgrad.com.au/newsletter to subscribe or follow the link in the show notes. See you next time.